So, welcome back to the penultimate video for Paper 1. You've done so well to get through all of these videos, and I assure you that it will pay off by the time the exam comes around. So in this video, we'll be covering all of the content that you need to know for question 9, which is an analysis question focusing on media language and representation. So let's take a look. So what is media language? Well, it should be something that you are very familiar with by now, as we focused on it in the first 3 videos of the TV unit. But it's always a good idea to have a recap. So the official definition is the way in which the meaning of a media text is conveyed to the audience. So in the previous video, the language we focused on was sound, camera work, mise-en-scène and editing, because we were analysing an audio-visual product. This time you may be asked to analyse a print media product. So in this video, we're going to break down the language of print products, which includes 3 different codes that are used to convey meaning: symbolic, written and technical. So symbolic codes are usually linked to the mise-en-scène of a product, which is still something that we can apply to print media. So that could include clothing, hair and makeup, setting and location, facial expressions and body language, lighting and colour, and finally props. All of the elements help to communicate messages about the product, which is really important in the case of film posters, as the audience needs to understand what the movie is going to be about just by looking at one image. So in this poster we can see that Iron Man's facial expression in the middle suggests that he is determined, possibly about to go into battle. The mountain in the background along with the planets at the top connote that this battle may take place in outer space. And the costumes, which includes lots of metal, latex and gadgets, and of course the green skin on 2 of the characters, might suggest that these people are superhuman in some way. All of that combined together gives us a brief indication that this movie is probably going to be an action movie about superheroes. Then we have written codes, which of course are really important in print media because it's a way of providing information without any moving images. So written codes include the cast names and sometimes reviews. So after a movie has been released, a new poster may be designed with some of the best reviews from critics, often with stars next to them to show people how good the film is. The choice of language is also really important because this helps to communicate messages. For example, in this poster the word infinity has connotations of space, as we link this to the idea of eternity. Even the word Avengers suggests the idea of a battle, and we can assume that these characters are in some way going to get their revenge. The typography style also helps to feed into this because it looks quite metallic like their costumes, and the slanted italics could symbolise speed. Don't forget to look out for logos too. So in this poster, Marvel Studios is a logo that tells us that this film is part of that franchise. And then we have anchorage. Now anchorage is the way in which the written text helps to make sense of the image or vice versa. So here, without the word Holmes, there is nothing on the image to suggest that this character is Sherlock Holmes. So the image and the text is working together to create that meaning. Baby Driver helps us to understand that maybe the guy in glasses, as he is the biggest in the image, is a young speed racer. And then of course, without the word Titanic, we would not understand that this is the iconic ship. And the tagline also helps us to understand that this is a story that's not just going to be about sinking of the ship. I'm sorry, spoiler alert. So anchorage is really important in terms of how the text and the image work together to create meaning. Finally, in written codes, we have taglines, which are a bit like slogans, but they essentially give us a bit more information about the film and the possible storyline. Not all film posters use them, but here are some examples. As you can see, Ant-Man's tagline, no shield, no armour, no problem, and Maze Runner's every maze has an end. Then we have technical codes, which includes camera angles and shots. So this poster uses a wide shot to show all of the action happening, and also any special effects comes under technical codes, such as explosions and CGI. Framing and composition also comes into this, which is the idea that where the object is placed in a frame can have a significant effect on meaning. So in the Goodfellas poster, the character placed in the middle suggests that maybe he is the most powerful between the 3, maybe the gang leader. In La La Land, they have left lots of space in the frame to show the sky and emphasise the stars, which links to the theme of the movie about Hollywood stars and dreams. And in the Jaws poster, the layout helps the audience to understand that the woman is in danger because the shark is underneath her, which of course gives us an idea that the movie is going to be about a killer shark. Again, sorry, spoiler alert. So, time for your first revision activity. Question 9 could ask you about any of the 5 movie posters pictured here on the right, so I would recommend that if you haven't done so already, print off each poster and annotate around them to describe the denotations and connotations of the media language. Remember that denotation is describing what you see, so I could say in the main poster that there is a tagline that reads the story of a nobody who saved everybody. The connotations is then the deeper meaning, which is the most important part of your analysis. So in this case, I could say, this suggests that the main character is an unlikely hero who saves the world. So take a pause and complete this activity and come back when you're done. Aside from the 3 different codes, media language also includes genre, and this is really important, especially for film posters, as they are there to help us decide whether or not we'd like to go and see a film. Therefore, we have to be able to tell by looking at it what genre it is, and the easiest way for us to do that is by identifying the iconography, which is the objects or images we expect to see in a particular genre. So in an action-adventure movie, here is the iconography that I might expect to see. Genres also have conventional settings and locations that help us to identify them. So in an action-adventure movie, I might expect to see a city, as urban locations are overpopulated, meaning that there is a real sense of danger that people will be in jeopardy. There will also be similar themes that are linked to a specific genre. So in the case of action-adventure, I am definitely expecting some kind of fight or battle scenes, or maybe some kind of quest or mission. I wouldn't be surprised to find some kind of chase scene, and most definitely I would be expected to see a hero and villain possibly facing off against one another. In some action-adventure movies, I may also find storylines that centre around magic or superpowers. In each genre, there are also conventional characters that I would expect to find. So I might find pirates or superheroes. I know I would likely find some kind of detective or special agent or police officer, maybe even a spy, and I might even find a wizard. Characters could also include animals, so I might expect to see mythical creatures like dragons or aliens. Which leads on nicely to talking about how these characters fulfill particular roles in each genre. Now, in all narratives, there is always a protagonist, which is the leading character or one of the major characters that the narrative centres around. There is always an antagonist, which is the character who directly opposes the protagonist and essentially causes most of the problems. Now, it's worth noting that not all movies will have a clear human antagonist. For example, in these movements, how would these definitions apply? Well, in The Fault in Our Stars, the illness is opposing the character. So that would be our antagonist, and that's not a spoiler. If you look carefully at the poster, you'll see that. In Volcano, the problem for the protagonist is, you guessed it, the volcano. So that would be our antagonist. It's also worth remembering that the protagonist doesn't always have to be the hero of the story either. In Sleeping Beauty, Aurora is the protagonist, as the narrative centres around her, but she is the one who is saved. And on the flip side of that, the antagonist doesn't always need to be the villain. For example, Professor Snape does provide conflict in Harry's story, but he is not the main villain. Now, this guy, Vladimir Prop, suggested that there are in actual fact 8 character types that we can identify in every narrative, and you can see them very clearly here. So take a pause and make notes on each character, as they will come in handy when you are analysing the Lego posters a bit later on. Another area of media language that we must consider when talking about film is narrative, which means a spoken, visual or written account of connected events, i.e. a story. Film posters have a really hard time in communicating narrative, as they only have one image to tell us what a 2-hour film is going to be about. But through the written, symbolic and technical codes, they can give us an indication of the basic storyline. So just by looking at this poster, I can tell that this film is about a monster shark that kills innocent people. Black Klansman's story is about a black man who infiltrates the KKK. And definitely maybe, well, I haven't seen this movie, but from the poster, I think it's about a man who falls in love but can't decide. Probably a love triangle situation. Now, one of the ways that narrative is communicated is through something called binary opposites, which is a theory suggested by Claude Lévi-Strauss. Binary opposites essentially means a pair of unrelated terms or concepts that are opposite in meaning. So here are some examples of common binary opposites that occur in many of the stories you will have read or seen. So if we go back to our posters again, we can see binary opposites being used to help communicate the narratives of these films. Now, although these might seem obvious, these binary opposites are what help us to understand the world around us, and so it is important for posters to clearly communicate them so that we can understand what they will be about. The last area of media language that I would like us to discuss is the concept of intertextuality, which we looked at briefly in one of the previous videos. So we know that it is the way that one media product references another in order to create meaning. So let's look at some film poster examples. We have Shaun of the Dead, which is referencing an 80s movie called Dawn of the Dead, Scary Movie, which is a comedic take on the movie Scream, and The Boat That Rocked, which has placed the characters in the same position as the iconic Beatles album Abbey Road, which of course then tells us that this movie is probably going to be about a music band. Now, there are 2 types of intertextuality. The first is pastiche, which is work that imitates the style of another as a form of celebration or tribute to the original. So some examples of that include Madonna's Material Girl music video, which paid tribute to the Marilyn Monroe film Gentlemen Prefer Blondes. Then there's Iggy Azalea, who made a music video in homage to the film Kill Bill. And even here you can see that Lego are paying tribute to the Mona Lisa. The second form of intertextuality is parody, which is work that takes an existing idea or person and exaggerates it for comedic effect. And you can see here some examples of that in action. What's interesting about both types of intertextuality is that it only works if you have seen the original media product. So take for instance the shower scene from Psycho. With its iconic framing of shots and editing, it is one of the most well-recognised scenes in movie history. Then we have The Simpsons, who are arguably one of the masters of intertextuality. So let's have a look at how they parodied this famous scene. Now, if you have seen Psycho, that will all make sense to you and you will probably find it very funny. But if you haven't seen the movie, or at least that scene, the underlying meaning and humour will be lost on you. So intertextuality does rely on the audience's prior knowledge in order for the true meaning to be communicated. So now we have come to revision activity 2. I have created 2 revision sheets which I have linked in the description, and so it would be a good idea to complete those by finding evidence from each set poster to show how it communicates genre, characters, narrative, binary opposites, and intertextuality. For the main poster, I have included a few points to get you started. So take a pause here and complete that activity before moving on. Another area that you could be asked about in this section of the exam is representation. So just to recap, representation is the way in which the media represents people and places. With this Titanic poster, we could consider how men and women are presented to us. So I might discuss the fact that the man appears dominant and protective because of his body language, in that he is holding the woman, and his facial expression shows him looking out onto the danger. The woman, on the other hand, appears weaker as she is leaning into the man with a panicked expression on her face. So that's my interpretation of how gender is represented. Gender is one social group that we could focus on when discussing representation. Other areas include ethnicity, nationality, i.e. what country people are from, sexuality, age, disability, class, i.e. whether someone is working, middle or upper class, and status, so how much power someone might have. As well as people, we could also discuss the way that places have been represented. So we could consider how London, America or Russia is represented to us, or the way that urban and rural places have been conveyed. Now, media language and representation go hand in hand because it is the media language that communicates the representation. So, for example, in this poster, we could say that the characters are represented as high status, possibly even royalty. Then we could find evidence from the media language to explain how this is suggested to us. So we could say that there is a crown on the woman's head. The title is actually called The Crown, which has connotations of royalty, and it's in a decorative font. There is expensive jewellery, there's a stern facial expression, the hands are crossed over, and there is an upright posture. So all of these elements together combined construct this representation of somebody being of a higher class. Now, when discussing representation, we must consider how stereotypes have been used, which, as we know by now, a stereotype is a preconceived idea about a group of people or of a place. So in these images, we can see the stereotypes in terms of toys aimed at girls and boys, which reinforces the stereotype that girls are nurturing and boys are aggressive and protective. Stereotypes do have an element of truth to them, and they are not always offensive to people, although they can be. And the media uses them to help communicate ideas really quickly because we all universally understand stereotypes. The problem with stereotypes is that they group a large number of people as being the same, rather than as individuals. So sometimes the media will use counter-stereotypes to help change attitudes. A counter-stereotype is when an idea goes against the established stereotype of a person or place. And you can see here some examples of what that would look like when it comes to toys. Now, stereotypes can help to represent people either positively or negatively. So if we look here at the images of older women, we can see two very different representations. One that suggests older people have energy and a sense of determination and fun, which is quite a positive way to represent them and a counter-stereotype. The other suggests that older people are angry and unkempt, meaning that they do not care about their appearance, which arguably is a less favourable representation, but possibly an oversimplified stereotype. The media sometimes tends to underrepresent people or places too, so here you can see the absence of characters from different racial backgrounds as everyone in the poster is white Caucasian. Often this is a negative thing because it means certain social groups are not being recognised, but sometimes this also fits with the narrative. For example, in Downton Abbey, the lack of representation of anyone other than white is due to the fact that this was set in 1914, way before immigration, when England was predominantly populated by people of white ethnicity. Therefore, it is an accurate representation. So it's now time for your third revision activity. This time you're going to focus on the representation of people and places in the LEGO Movie poster campaign. For this, I have designed a worksheet for you to print off, which I will link in the description. You should produce a sheet for each poster of the set product. Remember that there are 5 in total. And you should focus your answer on the following questions. So how have male and female people been represented? How have young and old people been represented? How have different races been represented and urban cities? Which stereotypes and or counter stereotypes have been used? How have people or places been represented in a positive or negative way? And are there any groups that have been underrepresented? So take a pause here and complete that before moving on. As well as the poster campaign, you may also be asked to analyse elements of the trailer for the media language and representations in question 9. Now the set trailer is the one from the ITV UK ad break, which includes a LEGO themed advert before the trailer. So let's take a look at that.
And to celebrate a much anticipated new movie coming to cinemas, we've assembled a very special ad break.
There are times in life where being tough comes in handy. Say some geezer collapses in front of you. What do? We need a volunteer that ain't breathing. Here's one I made earlier. First off, you call 999. I know. Then, no kissing. You only kiss your missus on the lips. You push hard and fast here on the sovereign to staying alive. Remember, call 999. Push hard and fast to staying alive. Hands only CPR. It's not as hard as it looks.
Yo, I got a custom-made 3-litre turbo injected GTI in it.
Hello, local youth. I am confused.com, but you can call me Brian.
Yo, what's poppin'?
I have run the details of your sensible 1.1-litre hatchback through my circuits, resulting in a saving of £366 on your car insurance.
Thanks for that, yeah?
Solid. Confused.com.
I can't let this carry on.
What?
This is no way to enjoy music. Your broadband is the worst thing to happen to music since Garage. I need to make it stop. I mean, start. You deserve better than this.
But won't we see a fibre optic cost loads?
I'll tell you what, I'll buy it for you.
Do that for me.
I can't and I won't live in a world where it takes the woman I love umpteen hours to listen to her favourite song.
The BT Broadband Sale. Fibre optic Infinity, £7.50 for the first 6 months.
Cheese and onion?